So from my heart to yours, I'm Alan Clements. Welcome to the World Dharma Forum here in Vancouver. For you online and for you here in person, thank you for coming out. Please take a moment if you'd like to invite friends. A few announcements, if I may, before I begin this evening's talk. On November 22nd, nice to see you, Marcia, will be the last night formally here in this building. We may move to Gastown, I might move it to Los Angeles, but I'm definitely on my way to Australia, where I'm leading a 5-day experimental retreat at the Temple Byron. For those of you who are in Australia, I'd love to see you. And I'm doing 3 shows back to back of my solo performance of Spiritually Incorrect that has now morphed into Spiritually Incorrect meets Relationship Incorrect. Expanding beyond the spiritual, it's called The Great Reckoning. And I'm blessed to say that my new friend and colleague, Peter Downey, and his film crew are doing a documentary film on the show and my life story. And I'm very honored, Peter. Thank you for that. That'll be coming out in 2019 in festivals worldwide. And we also have a Patreon site for those of you who have asked over the months how you can support these free live broadcasts and retreats and events and various things that I do. It's up and almost running. It's at Patreon/Alan Clements. You can pledge any amount you want monthly. It's the only way that I've lived for the last 35 years is based on the goodwill of other people. And I'll say more on that as time goes on. But thank you for coming out tonight from my heart. Really, thank you. This is the topic. It's not even a topic. It's really, it's a felt, organic, resonant sharing of something very free and very vulnerable. I titled it, I don't know why I titled it this way, but Advice to a Lover, Advice to Myself. And it just came to me. There was something kind of a little bit insane about it, a little bit poetic, but there you go. And the essence of it, let me backtrack. You know, I meet a lot of people and I ask a lot of questions. And one of the most important questions that I've come to ask people is what is the most important issues that you face in your life? I mean, really at the core of your heart, way down deep in your soul, beyond the insecurity of income, and what really matters to you. And I hear repeatedly that intimate relationship, a partnership, what constitutes an intimate, I want to say mindful, but trans-mindful in many ways, what constitutes a mature, meaningful relationship at this time in life? And how do I know those qualities to be ripe in my heart to meet that partner? Number one. Number two, I hear, is that I want meaningful work in my life, a livelihood that speaks to my heart, and a sustained ability to have income to cover the needs of modern day existence, point two. And number three, which sort of trumps almost everything that's ever been said on earth, is what does one do? How do we feel? How do I feel? How do I hold myself, my family, my friends, my tribe, knowing that we are in a state of collapse, economically and environmentally. And I won't go further into what economic and environmental collapse may look like. Obviously, it speaks to extreme climate change, the likelihood of loss of habitat, food supplies, electricity. The most extreme example could be near-term extinction, a guaranteed extinction. We've already had 5. It's not new to the planet that most of the life dies off. But it is an existential threat today that even my daughter at 12 years old can talk to me about it. and she talks about it with her friends. I hear it everywhere I go. What am I to feel? Who am I to be in light of these issues? Now, let me try to enter the third issue first and see how it segues emotionally into the first issue. I'm going to leave the second one of livelihood aside tonight and address the issue of advice to a lover, advice to myself, through one particular quality of 10 that I've outlined that I want to speak about over the coming months. But one quality about relationship that, if it has this quality, it seems to have a breath of magic, actually. It could be synonymous with meditation itself, but not meditation with eyes closed and simply sitting, but the ability of the human mind, you, me, consciousness, our sense of being, pause, may I invite you to bring yourself, all of you here, totally into the present, so that we can not hear ideas of relationship and love and intimacy and frailty and the possibility of extinction and vulnerability and all the things that come with intimacy and lover and loss of love, but the felt reality, the meditative felt reality of pure beingness here and now. Okay? You know, the existential threat of planetary death is very much at the soul of the meditator. I spent a fair amount of time in monasteries where it was silent and we meditated up to 20 hours a day, 8 hours of sitting meditation, 6 hours of walking meditation, and everything in between was considered equally a meditation, whether it be touching your face and washing or shaving your head, or bathing, or eating, or walking, or looking at the sunrise or the sunset or hearing the bells. Everything was in the realm of a felt here and nowness that was taken into the vessel of your own inner being and felt in the most mindfully intelligent manner. Not just thought as thought or image as image, but the dropping into the intelligence that animates consciousness itself. I'm speaking right now. I'm in some kind of spontaneity with a deep learned ability to language through an unexplainable congruence with neurons and brain and anatomy and thought, and through my vocal cords and the ability to, who knows where this ability comes from, this innate intelligence allows me to vibrationally send auditory waves across this space where they enter our ears and our mind and they have meaning. The lover takes thought into her and his inner being. The meditator takes thought in images and habit and translates them into the vulnerability of the new. The quality that I'm speaking to tonight is the dedication to high quality time together with yourself and your lover. If there's one thing that I can say that I love about living, among a number of things, I love the communion element, the closeness of love, the intimacy of love, taking the time and the habit and the clock and the context off of space. Pause. I was listening to an interview not long back with Bono of U2, and at that time the House of Representative, Mr. Tom Lantos, who's passed away, who was a survivor of Auschwitz, and he was explaining his experiences in the camp. And Bono asked him, you must have amazing experiences that have left a deep imprint on your being. What do you feel when you look back over those 5 years, Mr. Lantos, that you remember so well that that's where you go when you reflect on the camps? And he said to Bono that, in fact, my memory is not one of being in the camp at all. It's been on the train platforms, he said, prior to going to the camp, where every one of us, they're packed like cattle, all waiting to be shoved onto these crate cars. We all knew where we were going. We all knew, he said, that we were going to our death. And none of us did anything except stand there in complacency and apathy and waiting to be told to enter the boxcart. Now, a life interrupted, following the flow of habit and conditioning, knowing that the forward movement is to death. What do we do in the face of an existential threat where there is possibly no more future at all on the planet? What do we do in meditation, knowingly that when you watch your breath over and over again and you feel the frailty of one's anatomy, as you may very well do right now, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath, in-breath, out-breath. You could easily take that in-breath and out-breath for granted and think that because you have an in-breath, there'll be an out-breath, and because the breath goes out of your body, you'll have another in-breath. But like those box carts that went to Auschwitz, there was no future. And Bono asked him, what would you do, sir, differently than being told to enter those death carts with complacency? He said, I would have, in retrospect, raced to the front of the train and simply lied on those tracks, and hopefully my fellow women and men friends would have just piled onto those tracks and shown a solidarity with our own conscience and courage to confront the locomotive of slavery, persecution, and genocide. But I didn't have the ethical, moral courage at that time to feel that deeply into what is meaningful action right here and right now. And I'm talking about advice to a lover, advice to myself. Perhaps it's because meditation brings us into this so-called, not eternal now, but the mortality of this now and the frailty of this now. And in that frailty, when you watch your breath every day, in-breath, out-breath, when you watch your mind, thought by thought, 11 million people exterminated, and how many times is that going on around the world? How many extinctions do we have to face to realize that in this moment now, we have the most precious, magical opportunity with our lover, with ourselves, to commune in the finest reverential energy humanly possible. Yes, one has attitude that you don't understand, Alan. There are demands on time. We have to function in light of our responsibilities. Yes, I know that. I'm talking about advice to a lover and advice to myself. The most missing ingredient I find in people's lives is that they don't have communion with otherness at a level of satisfaction that allows them to go to bed at night with such a full, rich soul that they know that they've tapped into the finest places of communion possible within their own mind and body experience with a principal, intimate, a friend, a lover, a mother, a father, an animal, a bird, a planet, a life with themselves. Advice to a lover, advice to myself. High quality time. To me, when people ask to meditate, all I say, are you willing to enter the most sacred, magical, horrifying, beautiful, terrifying openness here and now, wherever you walk and talk and think and feel and listen and touch, with your lover, with yourself, right here and right now. Yes, we might be able to interrupt near-term extinction. Yes, we may be able to do things that bring a sense of conscience and hope. But it's possible that there is no escape, that there is no excuse, there is no ultimate angle of hope other than in the experience of living in the most true and dignified place of heart and conscience here in this moment now, knowing that it will both change and end both momentarily and possibly in the near-term future. Halfway through this talk, thank you for listening. About 20 years ago, I was in the jungles of Burma with the students who had fled the inner city dictatorships. And there they were congregated on the border with Burma and Thailand, about a 2-day walk from the border with Thailand. And they lived in the most complicated circumstances that I'd ever seen, with very little food, often eating rodents, many of them ill with typhoid and hepatitis. But they sang songs of love. They sang songs of joy. They never gave up the hope, knowing, though, that their future was very, very limited. And one evening, we all went to bed knowing that we had heard there could be an attack on this very camp tomorrow, not just with soldiers, but with jet fighters that had been purchased from Russia by the Burmese military. So people were very tense. And sure enough, midday, when the sun was right overhead, you could hear the sound of these unthinkable jet engines coming right down from the spiral of light, so they were blinded if you looked up. And my friend Trey, who was a Vietnam vet, he looked at me and he said, there is nowhere you can run to hide from jets and rockets. Stop. Stop thinking you can escape. I'd never heard a concept like that. I'd never heard it. He opened up a pack of cigarettes. He said, Alan, smoke one. It might be your last. And there Trey and I were, knowing that there's no way to escape jets with rockets that could take out a mile radius around you. And you couldn't outrun. You can't hide from these kind of things, he said. And there we were in this existential threat with bombs and rockets and simply smoking a cigarette. And I'll tell you, I'd never felt so exhilarated, so awake, so connected, so present in my life than smoking a cigarette with Trey under a rocket fire attack. There was no way to drop our bodies in front of a locomotive. We had to live in the mortal now. Advice to a lover, advice to myself. I ask sometimes, what do we wait for to be in intimate sensitivity with the finest places of our own heart with someone else? What questions aren't we willing to ask our lover, our friends, our hoped for lover? The questions that we want to ask ourselves, what are we willing and not willing to feel to arrive at that peak sense of desire? What really, really matters to you? For me, high quality, super high quality time, where I can share the most intimate places of my heart and listen to the intimate places of my lover's heart, my own heart, in that communion, that confluence, in breath, out breath. Talk to me about how you think and feel. Talk to me. Let us feel into the silence of shared being. Talk to me. What would you like to tell me that you've never said to me? Talk with me. Let us explore new places together. Let me end with this. About 2 years into my monastic life in Burma, I had been meditating pretty continuously, day and night, night and day. What do you do in a monastery? People ask. How do you know that you're actually meditating? How do you know you're getting positive results? Well, you have so little speed left in your mind that you can stretch out a word for a week. You see nuns, you see monks, you see lay people who mindfully will just simply look and feel the innate intelligence animating their mind and their body, and they'll just co-occupy that mindfully intelligent primordial presence and just feel. The only request for us as monks and nuns and lay people in a monastery was to feel. Only one instruction. To feel. Where? Right here. Isn't it amazing how the mind has a momentum to want to do the next, to say the next word, to make the next investment? What will we do if there was no earth in a year? What will we do if there's no earth in 10 years? How do we want to be? Taking the future and the fear out of tomorrow. Resituating, communing in high fidelity intimacy where you are inside of yourself with your lover as yourself. In breath, out breath. How well do you practice intimacy is another way to ask yourself, do I meditate? How well do I feel the resonant presence of other as essential and inseparable from myself? How could I ever be who I am without you? Day after day, the encouragement to feel. For 2 years I was encouraged to do this. Sitting, walking, turning, bathing, sleeping. Teachers are going to ask you, what breath did you wake up on? Which breath did you go to sleep on? In breath, out breath. In breath, out breath. I once watched a snail move on a leaf for 2 hours, just simply feeling the resonant shared space of life with life. I'm not saying there's something special about that, but it's advice to a lover, it's advice to myself. Take the habit out of love. Take the habit out of sex. Take the momentum of the next out of it all. People are so habituated to die at great speed. Isn't life to be reborn as frequently as possible? In breath. Out breath. For 2 years I did that, in silence pretty much. It was pretty remarkable, and the shadow of it was that you thought that you could continue it forever. time infiltrated right down inside of your soul, that you always had another day to be present. You really didn't get it, Alan, that the next moment, the next breath may not come. It may not come. In breath, out breath. Well, at lunch one day, there was a man right in front of me who was an elder with about 20 or 30 other people around him. And he was looking at me from about 10 feet away with his hands clasped in reverential style like that. And I looked up and caught his eye, and he was crying. It's like tears, with radiant face. And we were in silence. We weren't supposed to engage anyone. But at the end, I was very curious, and I asked him, I said, "Sir, why are there tears in your eyes?" And he said to me in fluent English, he said, "Your teacher, the Venerable Sayadaw U Pandita, said that you have been here for 2 years practicing silent meditation. And you've come from America so far away, and you're so young, merely 29 years old. And here you are for 2 years practicing like this. And here I am, nearly 80 years old, for the first time coming to this meditation center. I'm offering the donations to all the monks and the nuns and the laity here to feed all of you, because it's the most important day of my life. I am a farmer, and the village head," he went on to explain, "I've never had a chance my whole life to meditate. I've been so busy and being responsible to my family, to my relatives, and to the villagers. Only now at 80 have I had the moment to take the time to come to this monastery to meditate for 2 months. And I'm just in awe. I'm so touched that you have been here at such a young age for 2 years doing this. I cannot thank you enough for the inspiration that you give me." And I had never been spoken with in that way. Advice to a lover, advice to myself. The reverential acknowledgement of goodness and beauty and gratitude in other. And I thought to myself, wow, there's still that little shadow in me that takes it slightly for granted. I'm young, I've got a future. I'll go back to America. Who knows what will happen? Alan, you're in fantasy. That's a fairy tale. This man is a heavenly messenger. He's reminding you that you too could be 80 if you're so lucky. And you too, anything could happen. Go back to the present and feel it, not so much as in-breath, out-breath, but allow yourself to drop in more intimately to the timeless presence of mortality and feel the magic of this moment now. Well, I went back to my room and I was very invigorated to practice more intimately, taking the forward momentum out of my life. But suddenly, after about a day and a half, I had a strong pain in my abdomen. It turned into acute dysentery, which I'd had before, no big deal. But this was a very severe case that curled me up in a fetal position where I had to have antibiotics. And I could no longer meditate in peace. Oddly, I came down days later with typhoid, with this unthinkable pain in my brain. If you've ever had typhoid, it's severe. You take the antibiotics and you're free of the pain. And there I was recovering from this, and for some strange reason, I looked at my eyes one morning and they were completely yellow. As my skin turned yellow, I have hepatitis. And all of a sudden, I could no longer even sit up. And I had to lie down on my bed. And for the first time in 2 years and 2 weeks, I was now missing sittings and walkings, and I was consumed with thoughts of health and what would happen as my advice to my lover and advice to myself. I can't meditate. You can't meditate, Alan. You can't sit straight. You can't concentrate. You can't. I had no ability to take those thoughts and to translate them into, didn't you learn something over those 2 years of the mortality that because you take an in-breath and you have an out-breath, there may not be another one that comes? What were you thinking, Alan? What were you doing? Just concentrating for peace and stillness? Well, for 9 months, I lied in bed. I had to be operated on. They found a tumor. I had hepatitis. I had cholera. I was near death, 50 pounds lost. I was on intravenous. And for 7 of those 9 months, my teacher, Sayadaw U Pandita, had sent villagers whom I didn't know. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. I couldn't go to the toilet on my own. I couldn't bathe on my own. And these people, whom I did not even know their names, cared for me for those 7 months, picking me up, taking me to the toilet, cleaning me, showering me, lying me back down with fresh robes. And here I was, now just 30 years old. I had never known that level of physical, emotional, psychical vulnerability in my life. Where did my meditation go? I thought, in-breath, out-breath. Would I ever meditate again? I kept thinking. And it all of a sudden gradually dawned on me that meditation isn't a solo affair. Advice to my lover, advice to myself. Life is an inseparable unity of shared relationships. And finally it dawned on me that what I was learning in meditation was the wisdom of shared space. His tears awakened in me that I cannot live without you. It's not just my own mortality, it's caring for other as caring for self. These men and women chanted to me every night before I went to bed. Anicca vata sankara upadavaya damino upaticho va nirjanti tesam bupasamo sukho. All things are changing in this world. To understand this Dhamma, these realities of change, and to enter them with intuitive wisdom, you're able to resonate in the highest frequency of joy. Take the fear out of living. Anicca, but all things are impermanent. Right now, if we could feel the wisdom of that level of evanescence, everywhere, every molecule, every nanosecond, every wave, every wing, every wave of every bird, every dimension, every breath, every pulsation of every brain, every flapping of every wing, every movement of a hand, every whisper of a twig falling to the ground, every leaf, everything, all places, everywhere, impermanent. Anicca, changing. There is no guarantee except change. Advice to my lover, advice to myself. All I ask for from you is high quality communion. Not a lot. You can work all you want. But please, let us take 30 minutes a week to commune in the finest, most reverential places of the human heart. May we find that place of reunion and rejuvenation through that intimacy of shared space. They fed me, they cleaned me, they bathed me. If we're in relationship, we're going to have to commit to doing that with one another. I'm not looking for transience. I'm not looking for part-time lover. I'm looking for the union of God and the Goddess. Trans-time, a commitment that I care for you as I care for myself. And I can never care for me until I care for you as equal, if more important than me. I'll close with this. When I asked Aung San Suu Kyi the essence of spiritual revolution, and here she was coming after 6 years of house arrest, she said, Alan, it's the courage to care for things larger than your own self-interest, placing other above self. advice to my lover, advice to myself. Can we commit to high fidelity, quality time? I'm not saying all week, not all moments, but then when we're together, may I invite you to interrupt my habits. May you invite me to interrupt your habits. And may we find some new rejuvenation in this evolutional beauty, in this moment now that we've never touched before, if nothing other than I commit to this relationship. I commit to including my shadow in this relationship. I commit to removing blame and malice and projection and judgment from this relationship. I am with you. I am with me. Advice to my lover, advice to myself. High quality communion. So that's point one of what I consider to be quality relationship. So from my heart to yours, thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. May I invite you to bring the message, whatever you have through this talk tonight, this shared space, and bring that as a meditative experience into felt life. What does it mean? To feel. Take time out of the momentum and to really feel one another, because time is infinitely short, and anything can happen. And you know, it will. And it may even be that you fall in love again and again and again and again, and even higher, and take it higher. A higher love. That's all that we have here on earth, is a higher frequency of love. Thank you.